Chapter 9. Someone has said, where ignorance is bliss, 'tis folly to be wise. In our case, it was when ignorance is bliss, it is a blessing. That winter of 1910-1911, when we were snowed in, the Shoshone Indians went on their last warpath. They came down into Nevada from southern Oregon and killed a few isolated ranchers. When they were finally stopped, they were only about 50 miles north of us. We would have very likely had met the same fate, but word of the uprising got to the Washoe County Sheriff in Reno, and he made up a posse of 50 picked men and wiped out the ravaging warriors. There was one young squaw with a little papoose, whom they were bringing into the Washoe jail the day A.J. arrived in town for supplies. He had gone to the jail to dispose of some coyote scalps and heard the whole story. Had we known of that uprising when we were snowed in, we would surely have come on some sleepless nights. Washoe County had a hard time deciding what to do with the little squaw and her papoose. After keeping her for several months, they finally sent her back to her tribe in Oregon. When Daddy returned, he had a broken-down miner to teach our school. True, he was a Yale graduate and had no trouble getting a permit to teach. If children had been in high school, he might have been satisfactory, but he was too highly educated and his talk went over their heads. After teaching for a month, he realized he was a failure and resigned. This time it was my turn to choose a teacher. I'd gained some confidence in myself, and anyway, I couldn't do any worse than Daddy had. It was now April, and there was a beautiful spring weather. Luck was with me in getting a teacher, a big German girl, Elsie van Dormen, who had just finished her 7-month school term down at Bullfrog, an old mining camp in the southern part of the state, had reported to our school superintendent that she would like to get another short term of school if she could have it. I had asked the superintendent's help in getting a teacher, and he sent me to see her. I told her that her school was isolated and that she might not like it out there. She thought she would, for she was young and just beginning her teaching career. She would be glad to come. She had lots of courage, or she could never have made that trip. Our old horse had gotten sick on the way out. They had fed him alfalfa hay at the livery stable, which had given him colic. We had only gone 3 miles when I had to unhitch him, remove the harness, and let him roll. After he rolled and groaned, I led him around for a while, hitched him up again, and we slowly crept along. All that 35 miles, he was so sick he could scarcely pull the wagon. I unhitched him frequently and let him roll. The last 7 miles from home, the going was heavy because of the grade. We always dreaded that last long pull. I consoled myself with the thought, well, he can't go any slower when we reach the grade than he has all the way out. I was mistaken. The first step he took up grade, he stopped and wouldn't pull a pound. There we were with a heavy load on the wagon. It was sundown and we were 7 miles from home. What to do next? I knew I could easily walk the 7 miles, but I hesitated to ask the new teacher to do so. I tactfully said, I'll walk 5 miles up to the sheep ranch and get another horse, and then I can come back and get you in the wagon. Just then a coyote let out a howl. It frightened Miss van Dormen. Evidently she'd never seen a coyote or heard one hollow. No, I'll walk with you. I can make it if you can. And hitched Johnny and led him slowly along. When we reached Warm Springs Creek, which is usually a dry wash in the desert, it was a raging torrent 200 feet wide, fed by the melting snow of the hard winter. We took off our shoes, stockings, and panties and rolled up our dresses around our waists and stepped into the ice-cold water. Miss van Dormen got across first. In the middle of the stream, old Johnny stopped to drink. He'd drink a while and then lift up his head, yawn, and drink again. This went on for nearly 15 minutes, with me standing waist-deep in the icy water, dancing and jumping up and down. My limbs were almost paralyzed. The teacher was on the opposite bank, clapping her hands and laughing, and saying, "Oh, if I only had a camera, if I only had a camera." After what seemed to be an endless time to me, Johnny decided to let me lead him across the street. On the other side of the creek, Miss van Dormen and I sat down and dried our feet on my petticoat. She was a real Pollyanna. "I'm so glad I had to wade in that stream," she said. "Otherwise I might never have known the full benefit of a cold foot bath." The dear girl, I learned later, always found something to be happy about. It was surprising how rested and refreshed we were after our half immersion in this icy stream. We were fortified for the rest of our walk. We reached the sheep ranch in Old Goshen at about 9 p.m. I never heard his real name. I don't know how he came by such a nickname. He welcomed us warmly, calling the teacher school mamma, and preparing a good hot supper for us, consisting of lamb chops, fried potatoes, and sheepherder's sour bread. First, though, we fixed up an old bottle of baking soda and water and poured it down old Johnny. Then we turned him loose in the corral and hoped for the best. Next morning, the horse was all right, with no hangover from yesterday's colic. I rode him up to our wagon on top of the harness, hitched him up, and drove back to pick up Miss Van Dornum. We arrived home at noon, where they were all anxiously awaiting us, as we were 24 hours late. I realized that I had picked a winner of a school teacher. She had shown fortitude and uncomplaining courage, and I knew the trip must have been something of a hardship to a young girl thoroughly unfamiliar with the desert. She had proved her worth.